All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Just as a reminder, this session will be recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube later this week. So you guys will be able to access it if you have to hop off early or anything like that. But my name is Nina and I am the Associate Director of the Tulane Alumni Career and Professional Development Office. And so just a few housekeeping things before I hand things off to Miguel. Please introduce yourselves in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. It's always just kind of fun to see the different corners of the world that people are kind of joining the PDS from. So like I said, this session will be recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube. I will drop that link in the chat for all of you to be able to go and subscribe. We have over like 70 past PDS sessions in there, so you can kind of look through them if you need any help with anything professional development. We've got it all there. But our topic today is how to spot cyber attacks from the get-go. And if you have questions throughout, you can put them in the chat or you can direct message me, and then we'll kind of circle back for a Q&A at the end. And I'm just so excited. I've been talking to Miguel for a while, and I think this session is going to be really informative and great. So I'm going to hand it off to Miguel to introduce himself. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and can't wait for an awesome session.
Thank you, Nina. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you. I think we're good.
Awesome. So, sorry, I had to change my headset for like a second there. Are we ready to get started? Make an
Yes.
introduction first? Okay, because I'm
Yeah.
gonna introduce myself in in kind of the presentation here, but yeah, thank you for having me here. It's such a pleasure. I'm a Tulane alumni, and this is gonna be hopefully a very interesting talk around psychology behind social engineering. So hopefully, it's super useful. But Nina, I can get started.
Yep, you're good to go.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is gonna be, for the next 45 to 60 minutes of your time. I really want to just kind of talk about this concept of social engineering and the psychology behind it. And it's really coming down from this perspective of the cybersecurity attack that starts with hello. And so that's kind of the concept of where I'm starting this talk with. So let's see. My goal with this talk, which I want to share with everybody here today, thank you for being here, is that my promise actually is that I'm either going to bore you to sleep with me rambling about cybersecurity concepts, and you're like, this is boring, high-tech stuff, or my goal is going to be too that you learn something about cybersecurity, you learn something about social engineering and the concepts that hackers are using to exploit and leverage human psychology to take advantage of you, or you're going to be somewhere in the middle. So that's my promise. You're going to either fall asleep or you're going to learn something cool. So at the end of the talk, please let me know if I kept that promise. So a little bit about myself. My name is Miguel, and I am a co-founder and hacker at this firm called Huntrix. It's a security firm. And in the past 10 years, I've worked in big tech, higher education, consulting. I've did some work for the government as a security engineer. And my team and I, we have this community here in New Orleans for the cybersecurity community. It's called NOLASEC, and we organize it. We put events together every month for people that want to learn about cybersecurities, that want to connect with other cybersecurity professionals or people learning, right? And so I've actually helped over 40 different organizations and over 30 different business units with their cybersecurity. I've spent 2,900 hours ethically hacking in 2024. So that's a lot of time writing reports and just hacking systems. And that has been from like the startup to market leaders. I've worked with AI chatbots, healthcare, construction companies, trust funds, and even some of the biggest online stores out in the world. And I don't necessarily say this to show off or anything, but I say this because I want to share with you the past 9 years of my experience working in IT and security. So I have this quick agenda of what I'm going to be covering and with you guys today. So it's going to be talking about what is social engineering, some metrics just to kind of they're interesting of understanding what's the prevalence of social engineering attacks and where the future is going now that we have so much AI, introduced into every kind of facet of our life. Then I'm going to be talking a little bit about why does it work, what's the psychology of influence, have some examples for you, and then how to protect yourself. So easy enough, should be awesome, right? Okay. So can I get I don't know, there's not a lot of people in camera, but can I get a raise of hands or maybe a reaction in the chat or something if you guys have ever seen this specific cybersecurity or attack right here? Can I get some? Okay, got it, Nina. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I can't see the chat, but I'm hopefully you guys have all seen it. And this is the reason why I start this presentation with this example is because it's likely something that we see a lot in the higher education sector when it comes to an awesome offer of something that you can't, pass by. And we're gonna break it down on why this works, why so many people fall for it, and understanding those psychological frameworks that kind of makes us as humans bypass some of the red flags, even though this looks like fishy, right? So to get started, let's talk about what social engineering is, right? And we're going to be actually asking the experts, right? So I asked ChatGPT. I said, "Okay, Chat, can you give it to me straight? What is social engineering in the simplest forms, right?" So social engineering, I really like this section that I highlighted in yellow, is actually the art or is the methods of hacking people instead of computers. And at the core, I really like this is about exploiting the human psychology to get someone to review sensitive information or do something that compromises your security, that compromises some sort of system or your own lives, right? And so that's what social engineering is. And it doesn't just fall into the category of cybersecurity, but actually can be falling into the categories of fraud, legal, so many other areas like marketing and sales is another area that a lot of people actually use social engineering to get you to do something that maybe you're not really quite, it's not really quite something that you want to do. But if we kind of break that down and we ask Chad to give it to us in the simplest way, here in yellow, you can see that social engineering is all about exploiting the human trust. And so, why do we want to talk then about social engineering now that we understand what it is? And the reason is because this is how a lot of major attacks start, or just really bad situations in your personal, intimate lives. This is how you can lose tons of money. This is how you can lose access to systems, or even potentially be have your job at jeopardy, right? Because of some bad action that you were kind of influenced to do. And so I have this really cool metric when it comes from the Verizon team. So their team gathers a lot of data on data breaches. And one of the things that kind of phases me is that out of the attacks that they saw that they're reporting here in this report from 2025, 60% of attacks have some sort of involvement of humans. Like 60, that's a lot that's a lot for it to be for us to be part of this ecosystem, how we interact with technology and be a consistent element in terms of whether a successful attack succeeds. It's super like it's still something that it just amazes me, right? But it's not all bad. So the same team over the past few years have kind of reported how that human element metric has actually kind of gone down from 2021, from 2020, back in the COVID days. So you can see we have this trend of going down, and now in 2025, the big question is what's going to happen because you can kind of see it plateau. So that usually for me, it could mean that it's going to be, slowly going down, or it could mean a change in direction of how much more attacks have this human element involvement when it comes to breaches. And so I think for me, my prediction in the things that I see in the industry, that I think it's only going to get worse because of the advancements in AI and all the different things that are coming out, like deep fakes, being able to clone your voices, creating images, creating videos. It's making it very, very hard for people to really understand, not understand, but make the distinction between what's real and what's not out in the internet. And that's always been something that has been a problem, but now even more than ever, I think is going to kind of be a point of inflection in our history to see how, the introduction of AI and these systems that are continuously getting better, how that is going to affect the way that we interact with technology and the way that phishing and social engineering, ends up succeeding. So why does social engineering succeed? Why does it work? And why do we continue to fall again and again for it? And it's not really because we're careless or that we want to be fished. We want to go through this painful story of buying gift cards and not being able to get the money back and things like that. It's not because of that. It's because attackers, they know how to leverage predictable human psychology. And this is kind of the concept of this talk. But hackers understand that out of technology and people, if they have to make that choice, people are often the easier part to hack more than machines. And so we end up with this formula for social engineering on why it happens, where we have this trust, right? So attacking that human trust and understanding that machines can sometimes be harder to hack than humans. And so there's this big route of, instead of going through the hard road, attackers are just saying, hey, there's a likelihood that someone is distracted right now, and we're able to get past certain defenses, right? And so it really all comes down to human psychology and principles of influence. And so I have here, and I'm going to be talking about it. This is something that I'm very, very interested in sharing on the different types of principles of influence that have been studied by the psychological community. And it comes down to these authority, reciprocity, scarcity, social proof, and liking. And so I'm going to break them down, but these principles of influence are not just like tricks that, hackers are using. They're actually rooted in cognitive bias and behavioral psychology. And I'll tell you what that means in a second. And so if we break down authority, for example, authority is all about, since we were young, we were always conditioned to show respect for authority figures, for people that are at a higher status than us or something like that. And so that authority, it comes down with like the branding. It comes down with whenever we see a logo, we tend to think that that's actually coming from someone within representing that entity. That status is also something that we tend to think about. We tend to, for example, when somebody calls us and says, "Hey, this is IT, and we want to help you with something," you have this kind of branding or status of like, "Oh, this is people that fix something. This is people that fix issues in my computer or in the organization. There's probably something going on," and what it really does, the authority, the principle of influence when it comes to um, getting people to comply with certain people's requests, is that it's kind of like a bypass, right? Whenever you hear that it's coming from a CEO, it's coming from your manager, or maybe your skip manager, we tend to ignore certain red flags. And so the next one in terms of the the principle of influence is reciprocity. And so reciprocity is all about how we feel indebted to return favors, because of the social norms that we grow in. And so that means, for example, you get a call from someone. It could be a marketing department, it could be IT, it could be a hacker. But you've probably heard it before. It's like, hey, you've been a loyal customer for so many years. We want to give you a very good discount, but it's only for today. And I want to make sure that you get it. And we just need to confirm your information. Can you tell me your password? That is something that we first feel the reciprocity. Oh my God, they're doing something nice for us. And it lets us to, as humans, ignore certain factors, certain red flags, and then end up in a situation where like, oh my God, I just gave out my social security number. And so that's how this happens specifically. And and here the next one is scarcity. And this one's actually one that I see a lot with social engineer attackers, is the concept of, we as humans, we hate losing more than we love winning. And so what that means is that we have a trigger in our mind that we're more afraid of losing, money, losing a certain thing that we already have, rather than the desire to gain something. And the impulsivity of, oh my God, this is only for right now. This is why it works really well in marketing campaigns as well, is because we think that if we don't do something right now, there could be really, really bad consequences, or we can miss out on a great opportunity, right? And so that's kind of where the scarcity has been studied. That people, when people, I don't recall the specific study, but I think it went something like, um, people were giving, two things, and in one scenario, people lost the thing, and then they the team that was studying people in the study, they found out that there were more negative feelings around the people in the group that lost something rather than the people that gained, let's say, $100, right? We hate losing $100 more than we would like. We could care less if we got $100. It's nice, but losing it kind of triggers a different kind of fear in our brains. And hackers, they know this. And so they use urgency, and they use immediate actions to try to get us to bypass something that, hey, if you don't do this right now, we're gonna lock up your account. You're not gonna be able to work. Or if you don't do this right now, like, there is transactions in your bank account, and that kind of triggers us to bypass those red flags. Okay. So that was scarcity. And social proof is an interesting one. So they did a really cool study, where whenever someone doesn't, whenever someone sees a big group do something, the immediate brain reaction is to follow the crowd. And so when unsure, it feels safer to follow the crowd, even if we don't understand why that's happening. So in the case of social engineering, that might be something like, hey, we're collecting everybody's responses in the company. We have 90%. Yours is the only one that's missing. Like, we need to complete this by the end of the day. And so you have this trigger is like, oh my God, everybody's done. I'm the only one out. I'm the odd person out. And so that triggers us to feel some sort of uncertainty, and feel uncomfortable. And so we tend to comply with those requests where there's some sort of social proof there of, in that scenario. So that's one way that social engineering works really well. And then liking is the last one here, is that whenever we have well, actually, so we are, as humans, more persuaded. It's been studied as well. We're more persuaded to comply with people that we feel we share something similar, we have some similarities with, or people that we admire, and that could be based on attractiveness. It could be based on the same city that you're from, based on the alma mater, or backgrounds and family. So, I'm raising my hand here because it's happened where during the day, right, I get a lot of calls, and I'm more likely to pick up a phone number that is from my local area, even if I know this could be a scam. And so if you think about it, that psychological bypass, I don't really have to think about it too much. And this is why it works. This is why at the beginning of explaining these different concepts, I said it's rooted on that cognitive bias. And the reason for that is that our brain makes millions of decisions all the time. Like, we're always thinking of, what we're gonna eat, what we're gonna wear, whether you should send this email this way, or what task you need to work on first, and things like that. So the brain has something to protect ourselves from exhaustion of making too many decisions. And that is what a cognitive bias is at the root. And so we use these like principles of authority, reciprocity, likeness, social proof, the brain uses this to make less decisions. But in that process, we tend to lower our guards because it's more like a reaction rather than something that we really have to think about really hard. And so that's why I always say that, share this with teams that I'm working with. It's like, you hear somebody, or you're thinking about hiring somebody, and you see that they went to the same school as you tend to have this kind of perceived kind of bias to either want to hear more from that person, and be more persuaded to continue a conversation. So that's what that comes down to. And the problem is that not just social engineers, but like a lot of people out there, they understand that you can actually succeed by succeed getting somebody to comply to what you're asking, if you just understand those reflexes and know how to use them correctly in the right orders, say the right things, and people are like, oh my gosh, I have to do this right now. And so those are the triggers that if we focus on that, that's going to be one of the, giving you a quick, uh, you know, uh, into the future of this presentation. That is one of the things that if you are able to catch yourself in that reflex, it actually protects you more than, all the phishing simulations, all the trainings that you do that you always just kind of do it in the back of your head. It's more about understanding how you personally react to certain biases, and when you catch yourself into it, how do you counter that? Okay, cool. So, um, how do these attacks show up in real life? It's a really valid question. So, here's an example of a phishing attack. And we can break down phishing in different mediums, right? We have text, we have voice, we have video. All of those are different mediums of how we as humans consume content, consume information. And so phishing, it's seen in every area of this, whether it's misinformation on social media, whether it's campaigns or ads or actual phishing emails like this. This is how it happens. And so in here, I have this example because I want to break it down, right? When we see this, we see National Security Department, we see Apple FaceTime information disclosure. And we read it as like, hey, a vulnerability has been identified in FaceTime applications that would allow an attacker to record your videos and your calls without your knowledge. And you're like, immediately, you're like, oh my God, that's really bad. But catch something here. The logo of the National Security Department, whether that's the true logo or not, it immediately called into our authority psychological kind of reflex. So when we looked at this, we're like, oh, it's coming from the National Security Department. I should trust this, right? No. And that's kind of where we can catch ourselves. Oh, I'm actually just trusting it because of the logo. Um, and so if we look at this a little bit further, we see that, hey, to perform a verification, please use the following link. So there's a FaceTime verification. And so we're bypassing things like, this also says this website will only be available for 72 hours. So that's that scarcity, that urgency kind of psychological trigger. So now we're like, oh my God, people can see my camera, they can see, what I'm, in my phone, and there's only going to be 72 hours and it's coming from this logo. So that's why a lot of people actually fall for these, and it's actually really sad. I've had being in the incident response side and done some forensics myself. I've heard people cry on the phone to me saying like, oh my God, like I just bought $5,000 of gift cards and I can't return them. Like, what do I do? That was my paycheck. Like, that's tough, right? And so it's kind of like it's very sad to see that side of the story, but this is where we need to catch ourselves and really questions, and they're getting really good at it, attackers. So this is another one, and this is coming from Bank of America again. If we look at the from and kind of the header, the subject and stuff, we see that it's coming from a Bank 7, right? So that kind of gave it away already for you. But this is another example of using that authority of Bank of America. If you have that bank, right, you immediately think, oh, I should probably read this because it's important for my my bills or whatever. Like it's important for the money, the finances that you have. It's something that's very important to people. And so we see that there's this very simple email. There's been a login to your information, and then you see the bold. You say like 4 new transactions have been made from this account, from this Miami, Florida IP. Um, and then it says if this was not you, please reset your password immediately with this link here. And so that is kind of where we are afraid of that loss more than we're afraid of like anything else. So we have this attacker is leveraging the authority trigger in our brain. And then there are also the loss aversion that we hate. We're afraid of losing our money. 4 transactions from Miami, that's not me. And so even though Ameribank 7 is likely not the website of the bank, we see it and our brain ignores the 7 and immediately goes and takes action. And what likely happens here is that the attacker has some sort of doppelganger kind of domain, and when you go in, it looks like a Mary Bank, and you log in, and actually you just gave the person your credentials, and now they can actually log into the real bank. and take money out of your account. And that happens a lot with so many different people, right? So that is not limited to just email. Here's some examples. I'm not gonna break it down, but there's people that will impersonate mom. You're like, hey, this is mom. Can I ask you for a favor, right? And they try to first establish some sort of trust, and that's the likeness. That's the authority too. Because like if you're a college student or an alumni or uh, you know you get a phone number, a text message, and you're like, this is mom. First of all, why wouldn't you have the phone number saved? But here the attacker here has a pretext. It's like, hey, my phone number, I had to change it. I had to change providers. So like it's coming with the pretext of why you're getting a message from this, and then try to get your trust, and then later on ask you for a favor, right, and things like that. So that happens in the text format through different platforms. It could be in DMs, be text. It could be like here is WhatsApp, for example. Um, another one that's really good is we see these transactional emails coming all the time from shipping things that we bought, and in this case we have this random phone number. They just send us a picture of UPS with the same concept of, we understand the brand and we understand that UPS is a company that delivers things that we buy. And so an attacker here is using this to essentially get you to bypass the fact that they're asking you to enter some information. And if you read the link, it kind of, to me, it says UPS tracking, but the actual website seems a little bit off. It's UPS tracking ID dot delivery. And I'm not sure, but if you know, off the get, I would probably be like, oh, UPS, I'm waiting for something, like they couldn't find my address. And that could lead me to clicking on this link and actually providing information, or doing something or complying with the request of this attacker. Right? So let's see. In real life, right, you get a call from your IT person, and this is actually something that's worked really well for attackers in other parts of the country that are very well spoken in English and actually have breached million-dollar organizations. But this is like, hey, this is the IT department. I need, like, something happened to your account. Can I confirm your password real quick? Like, and then you're like, oh, it's IT, sure. Like, my password is password 123. And then now you've given those, whoever that is, without you vetting them, that information. Or sometimes it could be like, hey, this is your insurance company. Like, we're calling you. We want to confirm. Can you confirm some information before we can get started? And so this actually happened to somebody that I knew. And when they were telling me the situation of, the insurance carrier calling them, they were like, well, you should have that information. Why are you asking me to confirm? You're the one that called me. And so that's why we need to catch ourselves in those triggers. Like, that's a little odd, right? So this is an example of the IT scenario of somebody having this pretext of impersonating someone with that authority, the likeness, or likely something around the urgency of something happened with your account. But that doesn't just happen in the digital side, right? Actually happens in the physical security side. So if you work in like a building, or you work in events, you can actually test this. And I think this is a really funny video on YouTube of people wearing hard hats and having a hazmat suit on, and they just test to see how many like concerts and games they can go into without them being asked for their ticket and security. They just act like they know what they're doing. They have tools around their hands, and they actually get through. They get through, and they get past pretty much every physical security control. And it's something that happens all the time, right? People will say, hey, I'm coming here to fix the leak, or hey, I'm coming here to fix the outage, or whatever pretext that is. And our immediate reaction, because we associate the hard hat, or the way that somebody's dressed, is, oh, this must be okay. Like, this must, I need to trust this person. Like, there is a leak, or I don't want to be the person that prevented that person from fixing the leak. Like, it could be a very it could be an emergency that's happening, and whatever. You don't want that to be the person. And so that uncomfortable situation is what triggers us to comply, and essentially let somebody in, right? So that's another example. And last one is just the boss, right? So this happens a lot. Is the boss calls you, hey, I need a favor, or um, or something like that. And in that, again, authority, likeness, we wanna do the reciprocity. People ask you for a favor, and in hopes that you will be, or people do a favor for you or promise something to you, and you want to repay that back. So this is one in real life that happens a lot. Um, and so another question that comes up when I talk about social engineering and the aspects of the psychology of it is, how do people know, how do attackers know what to say? And it actually, there's a lot more information than you think about it out in the open, from just LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. Or this is just an example. There's so many like there's so many different platforms, but essentially from these platforms, people out there can actually find your role. They can find your pet names. They can find your city, family members, hobbies, birthdays, schools. So those are all things that help attackers. Um, the problem is not the information, is how they use that information to trigger some sort of your bias to ignore their request, the red flags, and comply with the requests. And so, a social engineering attack usually follows these three steps. It's the research that you don't see, right? And then there's the engagement, and then the manipulation. And so, this is one example of something that actually happened in 2023, the MGM breach. I don't know if you guys heard of it. It was pretty bad. But MGM in Las Vegas, they actually were breached. And the whole thing of what happened is, it was somebody called the service desk and said, "Hey, I'm locked out. I'm this person." They had this pretext. They had information that they over the phone can probably confirm. And so service desk said, "Okay, can I confirm your information?" Maybe that's not something, I don't know if that actually happens. There's blurred lines of the account from the people that say the story, but the general consensus of what's out there right now of how it happened and why is relating to a social engineering attack, is the pretext of, "Hey, um, I am someone, I can confirm this identity with whether they confirmed it or not. IT or whatever that person was behind the other phone in the MGM brand, they reset the password of that person, essentially giving the attacker the ability to reset the password, able to log in and have privileged access. Essentially, this led to a ransomware that resulted in millions of dollars of losses for this company. And it's not the only company that's been affected by this. Caesar's Palace was hit by a similar incident. Electronic Games also had a similar thing happened to them with social engineering, and even the Clorox company. Like, and these are just like big out there. Uh, they're very wealthy companies, but there's tons more of small teams, small organizations that actually go out of business. And I've actually heard stories of founders and owners of how scary it was to go through a ransomware attack or an actual breach, and the losses, the stress that it comes with it, right? I don't wish that upon anyone, but it happens too many times out there. So to kind of close out the rest of the presentation here is, I want to talk about 5 red flags that you can immediately just try to remember. Not that it matters because you'll probably forget this talk, but the more that you hear it, the more that you're reminded of these flags, the more likely you will be to, not just if it's a social engineering attack, but if it's a marketing or somebody that's kind of pushing you to do something that you don't want to do. These red flags are something that I would look for. So the first one is the urgency, right? Immediately, anytime that you hear urgency, that you have to do this now, you have to do this within 24 hours, like there's very there's situations that are um very unlike there's unlikely situations where urgency is like the first thing that comes to solving a problem. There are a lot of fires out there in business life or whatever that you need to resolve, but whenever somebody is requesting you to do something on using this urgency kind of principle, that should be like, huh, this feels weird. It's kind of too fast. That's your brain like telling you like, oh, it's fast, it's serious, like you need to move forward. But when you feel that, you should also feel like, is this actually real? Is this something that's gonna put me in danger like later on? Is this something that's, you know, compromising my trust in this person or whoever they're whatever they're doing to ask you to do, right? So urgency is one. The next one is that authority pressure. And I'm not talking like, oh, somebody, you know, pointing a gun at you. It's more like, hey, I have the status, I'm this person, I'm that person. That authority pressure of even if it's a brand or somebody that you admire, maybe somebody that you follow, maybe it happens a lot, right? In Facebook, it's like an account gets hacked, and then that account sends all of the followers or friends messages and like, hey, I saw it's this from you, like, and that just starts a chain of people getting breached and people getting hacked, and you know, bleeds into companies, bleeds into all that stuff. So authority pressure, question it, right? If that comes from, if that's coming from to in the form of a request, is a reaction that you have that you're like, oh, I need to do this, but you're like, oh, wait, let me take a step back. This looks a little weird, right? Um, Odd tone and grammar is actually one that I've written down here as third. Is likely going to go away with how even attackers that have no clue on grammar or you know, English or language and things like that. This is likely going away with AI. It's getting really easy to mimic good grammar, good English, and so it's still something that still happens, but um, is likely going to go. Likely going to be less of an influence when it comes to social engineering. And then request for credentials or request for any information, whether it's warranted or not, like whether like your insurance carrier actually calls you or your bank actually calls you and asks for credentials. My recommendation is question it, right? It's like, hey, you you don't I don't know if this is my bank. I don't know if this is my insurance. Like, why should I trust you? Like, there's that is a challenge that in the next few years we're going to see more of, and there are solutions out there, but it's not, you know, it's not across, it's not standardized for everyone. So what you can do to protect yourself is just question it, question those requests for credentials for information at all, you know, at all costs. And then too good to be true offers. This happens a lot, especially early on when I first started college. I think everybody just kind of falls for this one at one point in their life. It's you don't know, right? Because you come from high school and you go into college and you start getting all these emails, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can get $500 for doing 20 hours a week. Uh, and so it's too good to be true offers as you kind of mature in and go into different areas of your career journey, or you know, even if you're an executive out there, like too good to be true offers sometimes have some sort of risk involved. And so we have to be very careful as we are kind of analyzing what we're going to do, what our next steps are going to be, right? You're probably going to forget about this, but remember that the psychological influence principles. If you can if you can catch yourself in that jerk reaction when it feels like, oh, I feel like I need to do this, that is the trigger that you should feel like to question and really take a step back and take a little longer to try to understand and protect yourself and your family. So yeah, end this by saying you want to know your triggers and your cognitive bias. So that all comes down to understanding yourself, questioning like how you grew up, what society you grew up with, because it's different in different societies. Like if you go to the different places in the world, they have different social norms around reciprocity, around you know, authority and things like that. So know the culture that you come with. Know what you're more likely to give in or ignore certain red flags in order to protect yourself. And so again, I leave with this is think before you click, always. Verify before you share anything. It's so easy to consume fake information. Use MFA at all, you know, everything that you have, use MFA, and educate others. Have conversations like, hey, like this happened, like it's kind of funny. You know, have a laugh at it because the awareness that you bring through conversations and you know, people talking about these psychological factors or just things that are happening help us out a lot. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you're 100% protected, because you know, you can always be caught on, you know, that, you know, bad, you know, a bad state of mind. You can always be caught distracted. And so don't beat yourself up for it if you fall for it. it is awful, but we want like we have to understand that the more and more that we drive this our society into becoming dependent on technology, the more this question around who do we trust and why in the internet is going to be more important. And if that skill is something that you don't learn, you know, me talking as a friend or as a somebody that's seen this, there's going to be so many consequences for not developing that skill of how to determine who to trust and why. So that is again, my goal with the talk was either going to bore you to sleep or you were going to learn something interesting about the psychology of social engineering or somewhere in the middle. So hopefully I kept that promise. And remember, attackers don't rely on, they rely on trust, not tech when it comes to social engineering. And you're the first and last line of defense. So yeah, that's the talk. And you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect. Here's my information. So
Miguel, thank you so much. This was so informative, and I've got a bunch of questions that I got sent directly to me.
awesome.
But I will be sending like your LinkedIn and your website in a follow-up email after this. So if anybody doesn't get the chance to jot this down, it will be in your inbox later this week.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead with questions if that
Yeah,
works.
go for it.
Oh,
Go for
cool.
it.
How do you see these attacks changing over the next coming years?
That's a great question. Like from my perspective of, being young in my career, but at the same time, having been in IT and security for like over a decade, um, like the technology is changing super fast. And this is like probably like you hear this all the time, but it's just going to get like worse when it comes to people that understand how to question. Those are the people that are going to be likely less influenced to do something like that. My worry is that the general kind of population that forget to take uh, forget to have awareness or forget to educate themselves on this, those are going to be unfortunately easier prey for hackers. And it's a $1 trillion business like out there for hackers to make money out of this, make money out of doing bad stuff, of attacking your trust. And so yeah, with AI and everything, like it we're 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 in an interesting situation, right? With everything and just all the different areas that are being affected with this technology, but even more like our human trust and psychology, how that interacts in the environment that we live in.
Cool.
Hopefully that answers your question.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we have another one. If I do fall for an attempt, what should like the first thing I do be?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on like where you fall, right? Um, if you fall and you give your password away, the best thing that you can do is if you can still reset it, it's likely some that like hackers usually that's the first thing they do. So then you get locked out of yourself. And so the next thing is contact the security team at whatever place you gave your password to. Another thing that unfortunately happens too many times is that we reuse passwords across different systems. So like, you use your Facebook login and that might be that might be a password that you also use for your bank account. So once that password is compromised, you kind of have to make the decision of like, hey, where else have I used this password? And you have to reset that as well. Because then that becomes part of a database that hackers can try to use to brute force into getting to your system. So that's in that scenario if you give away your password um, and you don't have MFA. If you have MFA, you're in a better spot, right? If you start getting requests for people for logins that you don't recognize, then you have to ignore them because that's somebody trying to get into your account, and that immediately should trigger you like, hey, I made a mistake. I need to reset my password. I need to let the security team know of what happened and go that route. So yeah, so reset your password. If you have MFA, you're better. So if that hasn't happened to you, my advice is go set it up now. Um, and yeah, there's a lot more work that you can do to prevent things from happening. Once they happen, is usually talking to security teams, trying to get resolution with some sort of yeah, it's a security team, or whether you have to talk to authorities in certain cases. I've seen that with when it comes to fraud. Sometimes there's things they can do, sometimes there's things they cannot do. But you can sometimes have, you can opt to talk to authorities, especially the FBI is a resource, at least that I know, that they're always trying to gather information on how attacks are succeeding, and they use that information with a big database to try to get to try to see if they can, kind of pinpoint where that's coming from and, catch the bad guys. But there's so many different situations. If you get a call and you give out your social security number, then you probably have to contact the Social Security Administration or office and just let them know there is a process for you to follow. You might have to, freeze your credit. There's like the three credit bureaus, and this happens, a lot. But if you're not, if you're not going to be buying a house or a car, or getting additional credit cards or things like that, you can likely freeze your credits, kind of report, so that people don't try to open accounts with your name and the information that they know about you. So there's so many things. I'm happy to like chat afterwards or reach out to me if you have like specific situations. But yeah, it's very nuanced to the whatever specific situation you have.
Cool. Okay, why do so many phishing attempts use pseudonames like National Security Department instead of the official government name like Homeland Security or NSA, or have like obvious misspellings in their messages?
Yeah, great question. I think I go back to the authority. Like our when we see a brand, and when we see a logo, even like if we can recognize part of it, our brain tends to go has the association with like the government, like something happened, and national security agency or whatever it is. It kind of incites some feelings inside of you, and so that it's part of the attack to get you to bypass red flags. And so the misspellings, that's another, it's a giveaway, and I think it's more accidental, right, than it is on purpose. I think it's more, attackers from different countries outside of the US, attacking people in the US, or just misspellings, right? Because hackers have a varying level of skill set. Like there's usually a distribution between the skills of hackers. There's really good ones right here, and then there's people that are getting started and just kind of messing with people and scamming them. And so that's probably why you see that. But yeah, it comes back to authority and things like that.
Awesome.
Great
Okay.
question.
Yeah. And then how do bad actors decide who to research in order to stage an attack? Because it seems like a lot of work, although like there are definitely
That
pros to it.
That is a great question. I love that you said that. So it depends on the end goal, right? So when I said the distribution on hackers that do this for business, that do this for a living, to be profitable, they research people depending on the end goal. So they might be researching companies in the $10 million range specifically, and maybe they're researching people that could potentially have privileged access. They could be based on those metrics, whatever their end goal is, whatever their thesis is of who they are successful hacking. They see it as a business, right? They go and research those people, um, and then they use that to essentially impersonate you and call the service desk, or they use that to, yeah, yeah, just overall, that's kind of like the main pathway, is to be able to have information on you, or on the person that they're attacking, to have a higher likelihood that they succeed. And so it's not necessarily that they're researching one person. It could be like hundreds of people, and so they're trying 100, and if they get one person, it's a win for them, and it could lead into a big payday for them. So it's awful, but that's how in the more extreme, more experienced hacker group, that's usually what happens. And other times it's just like in the more, average skill set of hackers, and the lower end, it can be sometimes just, they have massive lists and they're just trying them out, and there's like lots of scraping tools out there and automations that you can gather information on hundreds of thousands of people, like in a few minutes if you wanted to, with automations, with technology, and yeah, so that's how they can do it. Yeah.
Wow. kind of
Yeah.
scary to think about.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like it's my goal is never to like scare people into like never sharing like that's not a great way to live life, right? When you have to share your successes, but just be mindful like whatever you put out there is essentially, out is public, is in the public domain. And if that's something that is out there, just be aware that that can be used against you, and protect yourselves, protect your accounts, and whenever you feel like there's some sort of trigger that's being pushed for you to do something, to comply to something, remember the psychological triggers, and then catch yourself in that act to slow down. Yeah, great
Awesome.
questions.
We have one more question. Do you have any suggestions for like a password protecting app or one of those things? Do you have any suggestions that we could
Yeah,
all?
yeah, no, there's so I'm not affiliated with any of them, but there's great ones out there. Um, the important part is choose one that is makes it easy for you to do, that you can use across different devices to make your life easier, right? Use a password manager. If you use like your the browser, there's like likely extensions for the browser that can make it easy for you to save passwords, to generate passwords that you don't have to remember, that are like within, a likelihood of never being, kind of guessed. But there's a lot of good ones out there. Just to drop some names, like I think there's like well like Bitwarden, there's like OnePass, uh there's a lot out there. You can do research, and based on your specific needs, your budgets and stuff, I do recommend. Usually they're at a good price point per year, and if you have a family, you want to protect them all. It's likely a good investment. You just have to remember to use them, and set them up and forget them. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, yeah.
We actually got one more question while you were
Yeah.
answering that one.
hmm
Is it easier to hack someone on a computer or a cell phone?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. Um, I think when it, so I guess the follow-up question to that would be like hacking somebody's phone and computer, or through the medium of a phone or computer. That would be my follow-up question. I don't know if whoever asked it, I'm happy to, if you could clarify a little bit, I can that way direct it a little better.
Can you say that one more time? Sorry, I'm just seeing if the person is messaging me and I was,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah. So basically, is it the question more around, is it easier to hack someone's phone or computer, or through the phone and the computer? Because those can be interchangeably, right? If you get an email on your phone, you might get it in the computer, and whether that's successful or not, it's a little interesting. So if you can clarify that question, I'm happy to speak on it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for them to answer, but I would be, I mean, I think however you interpret it, because
Yeah,
they haven't answered back, so I just don't want to speak.
gotcha. So, if it's easier to hack somebody over the computer rather than a phone,
Oh, desktop, they said. I don't know if that answers your question.
desktop, yeah. Mm, so what I would say is, like, the technology is the medium, right? The action of hacking someone through a social engineering attack, um, happens if you're distracted. If you take action from the request, right? Whether that be, you take action on your computer, you click the link, a button, or through your phone or your desktop. If you did that in any platform of technology, if the attack is, you know, tailored to that specific device or something, it could be that, it really does depend on a lot of things. So it's kind of hard for me to answer, but I think the concept of, it's not really necessarily about the technology, sometimes is more about the end goal for the hacker. So as long as they can get through, or bypass some of your protections in your brain, and get you to do something that they want you to do, that I think that's more important rather than the actual medium of how it happens.
Okay.
But it's still important, right? Because you can protect yourself, but there's only so much things that technology can do for us. A lot of it falls under our responsibility too.
And then we got one more question. Would it be helpful to not use to like use a different browser, like using a browser that doesn't use AI to keep yourself safe?
That's a great question. So I actually don't have a concrete answer for that because browsers that have AI integrated, like integrated into the tech of the browser, not like if you do a search and it gives you AI content, like if you do Google search something, sometimes it gives you like the AI answer. So those are two different things. So actually there's a concern with privacy in terms of like the data that gets gathered from your browser, and it all depends on your specific situation and what you're comfortable with. I will say that it is likely better if you don't want certain data from your browsing activity to or to be stored in that information, or if you want to read on browsers that what do they do with that information if they gather it, if it gets sent back to them. Those are all things that they're very specific to very specific situations. So my recommendations is not to avoid it. It's just like be aware and make a decision that's good for you for what you're comfortable with. Now, I would say, definitely there are browsers that do it better than others. So you can make an informed decision there whether you want, complete no browser can send data back to their company and analyze it. Yeah, because if that data gets breached, then that information is out there. So
Cool.
yeah,
Awesome. Okay.
great
I've been getting
questions.
a lot of messages from people that asked the question just saying thank you so much. That was so helpful. So just want to give you that feedback. This has been so informative and so helpful. I know I learned a lot. I did not fall
Love
asleep,
it.
so I went the other
You were in
way.
the middle, definitely. No, I love it. No, it's really cool. In cybersecurity, it's not always like the tech, the computers, and like the coding and hacking. It's a lot of it is like how do we as humans interact with the technology? Because the technology is a tool, and it's the medium for what makes something happen. And there's lots of great positive things about technology. There's lots of growth, lots of amazing things that we can do as in a society that we've been able to accomplish. But there's unfortunately, like as long as there's crime, as long as there is that greed in people, which will continue to kind of fuel, cybercrime. And so we're just going from like crime is like a forever thing since like the beginning of human, history. And so we just have to adapt to what we're living in. And so this is why I love having conversations about understanding where we fit in that equation, the ecosystem of cybersecurity, technology, and all that stuff. And hopefully, you're not ever 100% protected, but if we can have awareness conversations around this, if it can help someone, that's my goal. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Thank you.
so much, Miguel. Thanks for being
Yeah.
here. Thanks for hosting such an informative session. I will be in everybody's inbox with all this information that is listed here, and you guys can reach out to Miguel if you have questions. But thank you again, everybody, for being here, and have a good rest of your week. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.